Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hi my friends, and welcome to the week 41 wrap up, I think is where we're at. Actually, I didn't write it down, but I think it's week 41. I hope you are having a wonderful beginning of October. I am thinking about all of my viewers and friends who are from the area that was hit by the hurricanes. I can't even imagine. I'm very happy that the worst weather I get here is the cold, even though you have to endure the cold for longer amounts of time. It is not as damaging as having your entire home and everything you know wiped out in one night. Like, it's just horrible to think about. So if you are someone who is dealing with that, I'm so sorry, and my thoughts are with you, and I hope that in some small superficial way I can give you some recommendations that might bring a smile to your face or make you happy for a little while. I don't know if that's possible, but that's what I can offer to this, right? So if you've missed some of my videos from last week, or you didn't see, if for some reason this is the first video you're stumbling upon, I don't normally sit on my couch. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Normally sit in front of all my bookshelves down there, but I did hurt my back about 11 days ago, and I'm getting close to it being better, but the last time I tried to push it and sit on the floor to record, it was a mistake. So until I'm sure that I'll be able to get down and back up from my recording space, we're going to be sitting on my couch. Same book content, just it looks a little bit different where we're sitting. The first book that I finished was Monarch by Sophie Lark, okay, right? We're big fans of Sophie Lark here, right? I have a Love Lark tattoo. It's beautiful. But I will, as I've said multiple times, Grimstone, which is the book connected to this one, the Grimstone series, I guess is what this one was called. And this one does focus on the brother of Dane from the first one. But Grimstone is like my least favorite Sophie Lark. Not a huge fan of it. Particularly how the relationship played out in that one. I thought the mystery was okay. But yeah, didn't love that. Now this one was a much different tone, much sweeter. This one is a slow burn, whereas that first one, there's like sexy stuff happening right away, and some of it is kind of awkward and blackmailing and stuff like that. Whereas this one is about Elena, and she's actually a mail order bride. Where can I set this? I don't know. We'll hold it like this. This is weird. She is a mail order bride from Europe, and she gets brought over here by this man named Lorne, who she's going to be marrying him. He has a daughter. This daughter does have some special needs, and if you read the note in this, you'll know that she is based on Sophie's daughter to a certain degree, which is, I mean, very special. Anyway, do I have all the things in there? There we go. So there's some of that. But Elena, she's been brought over here to marry him. And when she gets here, there's a house that he's building for them to move into when they get married. And it isn't quite finished. So they're actually staying at the Monarch Hotel. Now, this Monarch Hotel is run by Atlas. And as I said, Atlas is the brother of Dane. So you'll notice, as I said, Atlas is not the one that she is engaged to or supposed to marry. She is supposed to marry Lorne. So this becomes a bit of a suspense slash kind of a mystery going on, because though Lorne starts out, seems very charming, you know, he's brought her here, he's taking care of her. They met through this like mail order bride site, basically. It's called something else, but that's basically what it is. They'd only met one time in person before she like came here, though they've been communicating online, all that, you know. And once she gets here, he's just not quite what she thinks. And so this is a slow burn, as I said, between her and Atlas. And I really liked how they spent time getting to know each other. Her fiance is pretty like neglectful of his daughter, so she spends a lot of time with the daughter, getting to know her. Our heroine is also a photographer, so she wants to go around and take pictures and get to know the place that she's living. Like, here's one of Lena's beautiful art pieces. There's her. And Atlas, again, who runs the hotel and owns it, is keeping an eye on her. And as he's watching her, he starts to fall for her more and more. And as more things come out about who Lorne is, she definitely starts to fall for Atlas despite all that. So this definitely has, as we'd say, kind of like some emotional cheating in it. But at the same time, when you read it, there's not this deep connection with her and Lorne anyway. She's really there because his name is the name on her visa. And if he were to like retract that, she'd have to go home. And she doesn't want to do that. So it's definitely very complicated. But yeah, I enjoyed this one a good amount. It was all right. Still not my favorite series of her that she's working on, but I did enjoy it more than Grimstone. And I know the audiobook for this is already out. It's very well performed. And so I gave this one 4 stars. This one's actually only a 1.5 on my spice scale. There's not much of that going on in here, like I said, which again, if you're someone like me who really doesn't care to see cheating happen, it is helpful because they really spend a long time getting to know each other. And that helps a little bit with that, right? Well, it did for me anyway. Okay, next up was actually The Gallows by Jillian Eliza. And this one was a book by Jillian Eliza, who has her first book actually coming out on Tuesday. And I hope to get that read before it comes out. We'll see if I do. I have 5 books coming out the same day. And since that one is from Nerd Fam, it means I don't have a hard date that I have to have it read by. So I hope to. But anyway, The Gallows is supposedly her last fan fiction that she's going to be putting out because she's going to be focusing on her published author career where she can actually make money from it, which I completely understand. But The Gallows was one that she already had completely written, and she started releasing it, I think, this summer, and it just finished like 2 weeks ago. And I'd been waiting for it to finish because I don't like to read the fics before they're all out. I want to support fan fiction authors, but also I just can't do it. I don't like reading periodicals. I don't want to wait week for week for stuff to come out, especially with fanfics, because fanfic authors already tend to drag things out, and I say that with all affection for them. But they want to keep people reading, just like you'd want to keep people reading your column or your periodical, as I said. So there are often like a lot of cliffhangers for chapters to get people to come back, and I just can't. So anyway, but this one wasn't super long. It only works out to be around like 220 pages. Word count, I didn't write down the word count yet, but it wasn't too many, and I enjoyed this quite a bit. So this one, The Gallows, turns out to be something called the Gallows Law, I believe. And so Draco Malfoy, he's been in Azkaban, and it's clear that he's definitely not the worst offender. And he's already been in Azkaban for a few years. And now he's finally being like, I don't know, tried again? I can't quite remember how this started, but they basically are going to sentence him to death. And Hermione steps up and enacts the Gallows Law, which I didn't write down all the details of this, but it basically has to do with that if you step in and agree to marry a person who's on death row, you take responsibility for them, and then they can escape from that. And I think part of it has to do with like them needing to, you know, repopulate some of the wizards. So it's like if there's someone willing to take on someone from Azkaban, you know, they'll hope that they'll make babies with them, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, but Hermione's point of it is to save him from death. The one thing they get reminded of, though, is that you can't just be like taking advantage of this law. If the purpose of the law is for there to be like a union made out of it, they only have 30 days to consummate the union. And there's a spell on basically like their binding. And if they don't have sex within 30 days, the deal is void and he goes to Azkaban again, which would mean he would be getting killed as well. So if they don't have sex within 30 days, he'll still die. And in the beginning of this, he's really not happy to have been saved, you know, because he's been in Azkaban and he's been being, you know, tortured and slowly drained of all happiness there. And yeah, it's just really tough because she wants to help him, but he also doesn't want to like help himself that much. So to get to the place where they both would want to consummate their relationship is going to take some work, basically. But I thought this one was really good. This has a very broken Draco, and I do wish that we got to see a bit more of him get his groove back type of story. But this also wasn't drawn out too far. I can't remember how many chapters it was, but again, it was only like 220 pages. So it doesn't take that long. So I enjoyed this one a lot. I really love her writing, obviously. I hope that I love Ruin and I'm able to, next week, I'll have finished it and really give you a review for it. But either way, if you want to test out her writing maybe for free in a fanfic, I'll have the link to that fic down below. I did give this 4 stars, and it's a 2.5 on the spice scale. One of the things I want to put out there is at some point, probably with either the end of this year, I'm going to stop actually rating fanfics, even in my videos to you guys, because I've since been made aware that fanfic authors don't really like their things to be rated, because that's not why they're writing it, and you're not really reading it to rate it and then, you know, get someone to buy something, because that's a lot what the ratings have to do, right, is to convince people. We will be having the next fanfiction readathon in November. I'm actually working on it right now. It will be happening, and one of the things we're putting in place is to actually ask people not to rate it on social media, to just say whether you like recommend or not. And that is difficult for me because I like to rate things and keep track of it, but I want to come up with some kind of equivalent scale where it's like, I recommend it, I don't, or maybe, like maybe as simple as that is what I read. Weston by Rhea Morris Edwards. So this was a new to me author, actually, from just a couple weeks ago, and y'all know I was pimping out Sovereign to everybody in September. I just loved it. And Weston actually came out the last week in September when I had a lot of arcs that I had to finish up, but I didn't want to wait too long to read this. So I actually did read the Kindle Unlimited version of this, but this was sent to me from V, who is one of my patrons and a fan and everything. She's amazing. And she was like, oh, I want to send this to you. So she sent me a copy of Weston. So yeah, this is book 2 in the Sovereign Mountain series. And Weston is kind of a like, he's the right-hand man to Sovereign, and they've been friends since they were younger, and they basically built this business together. And though Sovereign is kind of the face of it and the like bulk of it, Weston is still a big part of the business as well. Now, what was interesting about this story is it actually starts during the 6th month, like, time jump that happens right in the middle of Sovereign, right? In the beginning of Sovereign, we see the life that Kira's living, and then her husband dies, and then it skips 6 months until her and Sovereign like are hooking up or getting together. So this starts during that time when Diane and him meet. And so Diane is the sister of another rancher, right? That's how all of these are connected that way. And her brother is in business with the Garrison brothers, right? Now, if you read Sovereign, you'll know what happens with that. If you haven't, I don't want to spoil that one, so I'm being vague. But basically, to like make it clear, like Weston and Diane meet each other before Diane is forced to marry Thomas Garrison. So she's forced to marry Thomas Garrison as like, he's basically given to her, or given to him from her brother, which is awful. But she was already falling for Weston, and then she's forced to marry this guy. But then I won't spoil it. So a certain part of this book then is taking place the same time as Sovereign, and then we eventually catch up and Weston and Diane are together, and then we have the rest of the story, okay? So I won't talk anymore about those details because I don't want to spoil them. But I want to talk about then how I felt about this one. So I ended up at a 4.5 star for this one. But something I want to be like clear about now, just before we go further. There's a lot about this that replicates stuff that happened in Sovereign. And this is something that always is difficult for me to see happen. And I mean, I'm sure authors aren't trying to do this, but it's something that I see happen, that when the first book in a series is super popular, and then the author just kind of does a like stamp change, or like stamp, repeat the same, like set up the same, kinks the same, dynamic, like all of that stuff. Now, I'm not saying it's exactly the same. I'm not saying that. No. But there are a lot of things that are similar with, like, he wants there to be a contract. He's into kink. He's introducing her to it. You know, he wants her to feel safe and feel free by being with him. A lot of the things that made Sovereign a 6-star book for me are in here, but now they feel like an echo of the first one, and it makes it harder to fully engage with these characters when you see so many similarities. This is not, again, this is not something that Edwards is, you know, the first author to ever do this. It happens all the time. If you get a winning formula, you want to keep going. But what I want to see is, even if she wants this whole series to be BDSM, which is clear that it will be, Deacon is going to be the next hero, the next story. And that one is also going to be BDSM. Like, I'm okay with that because some authors, that's their brand. Like, BDSM is their brand. But I really want that one to feel different in how they get into the BDSM relationship, how they get connected to each other. Like, I don't want it to be him rescuing her from something. Again, I don't want it to be like BDSM is the only way to free her from everything. Again, right? Like, I liked that in Sovereign because to me, Kira was decidedly someone who needed it. And in this one, Diane as well, I can see why. So that's why I didn't like trash this. And also, it was still written very well. It was very compelling. I still flew through this one as well. It's just that by the time I got to the end of this one, I just had been wishing for a different. And also, Weston isn't as intense as Gerard is, because she doesn't make him exactly like Gerard. He's not Gerard. He's not exactly Gerard. But it then also just makes him feel like a weaker version of him. So it's not that I want Gerard to be copied. I want Weston to be Weston. I just don't always agree that every guy in a series would all be into BDSM and the same kinks and want to use the same things and do. Also, he starts collecting sexual implements to use with only her. They're only bought with her in mind. That's the same thing that Gerard was doing. Like, there's just too many things that are exact parallels, and I just don't believe that two men, even if they're good friends and they share the same proclivities, that they would be so similar. So I didn't mean to rant about this one. Again, when I ignore all the parts of Sovereign, this was still a 4.5-star book for me, and I liked it, and I like this couple. But that's my thing, is I'm like, well, now when I read Deacon, which I believe is coming in January, how different will Deacon be? Because if Deacon feels like an exact or close replica of Sovereign and Weston, then I'm going to kind of be like, okay, well, Sovereign was what I was looking for. None of this detracts from Sovereign being a 6-star book for me, because just every moment of that book, I loved it. And I still think the author is very strong, but I want to see what else she can do with a BDSM cowboy book, because there are other ways that you can do that, right? Anyway, let me go quick through these ones. So trigger warnings, there's spousal abuse, like kind of brotherly abuse too. I don't know another way to say that, like domestic abuse, I guess, covers it all. Murder and manipulation. This one had spanking, toys, edging, obviously BDSM, and very, like, it was still very hot, and I still loved this couple. I want that to be the takeaway. I mostly just wanted to comment on when that happens in series where an author has a winning setup and they just replicate it. They change the tropes, but yet their relationship is still similar. So I'm just like, let's not do that. All right. Then I read Rival Secrets by J.D. Carruthers. And this was a new to me author. I listened to this book. This was an ALC from Must Love Audio. It was narrated by Shane East and Samantha Brentmore in a dual style. And this was cool. So this one is set in Vegas. That's not a Vegas wedding, right? I feel like that's really rare. But we have our hero, who he is actually a European prince. His name is Evan, and he is the spare heir. Okay, so he's not the one who will be king, but his father will actually be abdicating soon. He'll be retiring, and in this country, because they're in like modern times, the king can actually retire once his son is of a certain age and or he's married and ready to, take over that way. So Evan is never going to be king, but he wants to find a way to be useful. He knows he has a life of privilege, blah, 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 blah. So he wants to take kind of a sabbatical from his royal duties to kind of discover what he wants to do with his life and what he'll be satisfied with and how that can, contribute to his country and the world. So very, very good aspirations. And he actually gets he calls his friend who owns a hotel in Vegas, runs a hotel in Vegas, and his friend is like, yeah, come and stay. And so that's what it starts off with, is he's going to go to Vegas to stay and just kind of work through what he wants to do. And while he's there, his friend actually asks him for a favor. He's like, in exchange for you staying here, for 2 of the weeks when you're here, there's actually a chef competition going on. They recently lost their head chef in the restaurant at the hotel. And so they're going to do like a Food Network style, like chef competition to find a new like chef for the place. And actually amateurs and professional chefs can enter it. And then enters our heroine, whose name is Cassie, and she's actually a lawyer in the beginning of this. She has taken a chef's course, but she's a lawyer. Her parents are both lawyers. Her parents are actually both dead. She is an orphan. She's on her own, and she's working really hard. And her friend, like, she finds out about this competition and she isn't going to do it because she's like, I can't take 2 weeks off of work, blah, blah, blah. And her friend basically like dares her into it, convinces her to do it. So if you can't guess, that's how this is going to pair up, right? So Evan is one of the, he's not a judge, but he's kind of overseeing it for his friend. There's also is a murder mystery that's going on at the same time, because one of the judges who was supposed to be the judges in this was actually killed recently in kind of a suspicious way. So this series is actually called Love Over Murder. So I have a feeling there will be mysteries in each one of these books. But Cassie and Evan meet when she actually gets asked to come there, not as a contestant, but as the first alternate. So she'll still get an all expense paid trip to Vegas, but she won't necessarily be competing. Now, with this being called Love and Murder, we'll see if everyone survives the competition, right? So yeah, this was just fun. I mean, it has a bit of a murder mystery. It was pretty low angst for them. It's a bit of an Insta connection, right? Because they're only in Vegas for 2 weeks. It's also a little bit forbidden because contestants and judges aren't supposed to be together, but they just have this great connection. Obviously, they share a love of food, and they're both there for the experience, and so it was sweet. I liked it, and I really enjoyed the narration, of course, and it was a good time. So this one was a 4-star, and it was a 2 on the spice scale. Okay, next up, I read Eternally Devoted by Daisy Jane. So this is book 3 in the Twisted Sisters series, which I really loved, all my love. And book 2 was okay. It was a solid read, which was yours truly. And this one, Eternally Devoted, is an MMF, and it's a female serial killer. And then her 2 best friends and her all falling in love. One of the friends is a garbage man and one is a young police officer, and those 2 guys are actually roommates, and all 3 of them are friends. And pretty early on in the story, we discover that our heroine has a killing problem. She impulsively murders men who she thinks deserve it, and she at the point in the story where everything's kind of culminating, she kills someone on impulse in a very risky place, and she needs help hiding the body. And so she asks her friends for help. And through this journey of helping her not only dispose of the body she just murdered, but discovering that she is a serial killer, they are digging up the body she has buried and fully disposing of them so no one will ever catch her. At the same time they're helping with this, they're also all three falling in love and admitting their feelings to each other. And if you can't tell from my face, this was not my favorite Daisy Jane. And I don't want to fully rant on it. Like, I just don't, because there was so much that bothered me. Mostly because this just felt like such a turn. Like, yes, the previous two sisters were also twisted. It's the Twisted Sisters series, right? The first one, she was a stalker. She would sneak into his house and masturbate in his bed, use his toothbrush, and like smell him and all these things. But she was very charming, okay? The second one, the heroine puts a chastity cage on the guy's cock because he can't keep it in his pants. But they were also like, he was a naughty boy, and like, it was fun, okay? This one, she is a serial killer. And we try to come up with reasons why it's okay to just kill these men. Like, he hits a dog, so it's okay to smash his head in with a jar of jam. And like, I know it's supposed to be satire in a certain aspect, but those first two books were just erotic and fun and very kinky. Some great kinks were in those. This one was dark. It was very dark. And I mean, maybe Daisy Jane meant the first two to also be dark, and I just didn't see them as dark. But the way that she has blatantly and flagrantly killed 10 or so men, and she admits that some of it is in a rage, some of them she calculatedly planned, and some of them is in a rage. And these two men apparently just love her so much that they believe she would never kill someone who didn't deserve it, who hadn't threatened her or someone else, even though she admits that in a rage it can set her off and she will just do it, right? And I don't know, I just don't like it, and I didn't care for that as someone who watches a lot of true crime. Like, this maybe just wasn't the book for me. And I was bummed because I had missed that this was going to be an MMF. I was still planning to read it, but I had somehow missed that where she was saying it was MMF. And so when I saw it was MMF the day it came out, I was like, I want it right away, right? I love a good menage, and I love some sword crossing. And I did enjoy the bisexual awakening that we saw for both men in here, them admitting their feelings, Junie kind of like making it happen, bringing them all together. I really didn't care for her being a serial killer. And you guys obviously know I'm okay with reading books about serial killers, but the tone of this was just so off. And then the big trigger warning. And again, Daisy Jane, of course, she warns you about every one of these. If you read the trigger warning page, you knew what was in here. But there's this whole joke on her Instagram of like what's in the jam, because Junie makes jam. Well, some of her jam contains like the liquids of her victims that she then sends jars of her jam to a correctional facility to have it fed to rapists and murderers. Okay. Again, I'm not here standing up for the baddies, all right? I love a good story where we get revenge on them. But the tone of this was wrong. And I just, the forced cannibalism of that is so gross that even if I was like, oh yeah, these guys deserve that, it's icky to me. Like, and whenever a book makes me feel icky, it's a bad sign. So this is the first Daisy Jane I've truly been like disappointed in. And even the smut and the kinks couldn't like pull it up for me. So I ended at a 3-star with this one because her writing is still easy to read and I got through it quick, but I didn't like care for that. So this was a 3 on my rating scale, was a 4 on the spice scale. The kinks were like, we had bisexual awakening, we had docking, we had pegging, DVP, and more. Like, she actually loses her virginity with DVP because she's like, I want my body to learn to take both of you at the same time from the beginning, right? Like, that's hot. Also terrifies me, but like, that's hot. But I just didn't care for Junie. I was like, you need to go to jail and you're probably going to bring these nice men down with you, is how I felt, right? Yeah, and the trigger warnings were murder, body disposal, dismemberment, cooking with flesh, forced cannibalism, and animal abuse and SA. So the tone was just all off on this one for me. Okay, then real quick, I read Hills of Shivers and Shadows for the third time. I know. So I'm not even gonna go into what this one is about. You can watch my review up here if you want a more in depth. But I received a complimentary copy of the audiobook from Pam. I cheekily, about a month ago, had asked her, like, hey, if you get any ALCs, send them my way. Because she doesn't have an ALC team, I don't think. Maybe she does. I don't think she does, but I just asked because I was like, I would love to review this for you if you send it to me. And so Podium did give her some codes for it, and she sent me one. So I needed to reread this so I could listen to it. So my quick moment on this is that the narration was superb. I knew it was going to be, but this was in duet style, okay? Which, again, a reminder, duet is where there's a man doing the male parts and a woman does all the female parts, no matter whose chapter you're reading. And so we had Stella Hunter, who's wonderful. She was doing Frankie's parts. And then we had this guy named John Hesperus, who did all 5 of the male parts, okay? So he was Cody, Leo, Wolf, Denver, and Monty. And he had distinctive voices for each of them. And it was crazy because Cody and Leo sound pretty similar voices he used, but he still finds a way to do their growl just a little bit different so that it's different. And it was fantastic. And the voice he does for Denver is almost a little soft and just so creepy. And when he's saying the things about how much he loves his sons, the shivers are real. They're there. So this is one of my 6-star reads. No surprise. It's now the 3rd time I've read it, and I love it more and more every time. This is the first time I'm reading it since I know the final ending, though, because I read it when it first came out, and then I reread books 1 and 2 right before book 3. And this is the first time rereading it after that, and there were a few hints I found to what the final conclusion was, and I was like, ooh, it's there, and I love it. I love to see it. Okay, then there was Forgive Me, Father by Katarina Sinclair, and this was one I was anticipating. I 100% had this on my TBR due to the author's artwork, and the things that were shared were amazing. Now, there is a lot about this author now. Well, not a lot. There's a few things about this author now that are a little bit controversial, which I'm not going to get into because I stay out of it. But there is a AI program that she was working on through her college that was all made out of artwork that people submitted in, and then they are able to, not forcibly submitted in, right? But ones that artists have voluntarily submitted in, and then if their artwork ends up getting used in the final composition for something, they receive a payout for it. So that is the program that they were working on. Now, I don't know enough about it to know. You can look up this author's Instagram if you want to look into that. But my point being is the artwork is so hot, and it's what drew me in. So I just wanted to be clear that yes, some of it is an AI, but it's supposed to be, supposedly, they're developing a program or a database that will pay the artists when it's used so that it isn't stealing from them, and it will credit artists too. If that's true, I don't know. That's why I'm being honest with you. I don't know, but I still really wanted to read this book based off of that, and so I did, right? So this one, we'll see what further developments come, right? I'm very skeptical, but the proposition they're putting forward, I find interesting. And I wish it was a way that other AIs could work as well, if it's true. Like I said, I'm skeptical, and if it proves to be wrong, I will definitely tell you guys and retract that statement. But I'm interested. I'm watching it anyway. Anyway, so Forgive Me, Father is a forbidden priest romance. It is about Eden, who has come back from school and is now living back with her parents and younger brother. And her home is very abusive, so she's not happy to be back. But something really bad happened in school. I'll just tell you, she was sexually assaulted in college, and everything just kind of blew up when that happened. She is self-harming. You will see that she has evidence of her self-harm on her. And she has definitely thought about unaliving herself, okay? Then we have Father Roman, or Father Breyer is his name, who actually takes up a position as priest in her town, because the current priest, Father Kevin, is going on a bit of a sabbatical. So Father Breyer is going to be there for 2 years, or not 2 years, for 2 months, I think it is. And Eden's father volunteers her to be an altar assistant or whatever, as actually kind of a punishment, because he wants to make her suffer, I guess. This father is a real piece of work, just so you know. And there's immediate connection between Roman and Eden, and it does actually have a past that Eden isn't aware of, so I won't spoil that. But I will say it in the fact that if you read this and you see how insta-lusty it is, there is a bit of a hint at why later on. You'll see maybe why he's so willing to be so into her so quickly when he's a priest and everything, you know? But yeah. Then when things like really tip over, actually, he sees her when something really bad happens. So her younger brother and his friends actually do something really crappy to her. Her younger brother is being a real shit in the beginning. And now he's not like a young boy. He's like in his late teens. She's like, I think like 5. He might even be graduated too. I don't know. But anyway, he hasn't left home yet. And now she's back at home. I think she's 22, 21, 22. Or is she 20? I think she might be 20. Because she didn't finish college. And her brother's just a few years younger, and they're both at home. And he's been being abused by her father. She's been abused by her father. And he lashes out and he does something. Like, it's really shitty. He does ask for forgiveness later, and they decide not to let their father tear them apart, is kind of the point. But anyway, and so Roman, he actually comes across her after this thing has happened. And he sees her wanting to like self-harm herself. And he puts her in his car and he's like, if you want to feel pain, like feel it this way, blah, blah, blah. And they go into, he's kind of doing some BDSM things with her. And he's like, feel pain this way instead of this way. This is a way to channel it into it. So anyway, won't go into full details of this, but this has a deeper story though than just their forbidden romance, because it turns out her father just isn't an abusive asshole to her and her brother. There's something much bigger going on in this town, which I'll tell you what it is when I tell you the trigger warnings. And there were things that Father Kevin was involved in, and there are things that her father is involved in. And when her and Roman start unraveling it all, they realize they're in a much bigger situation than just their forbidden love story that they're having happen. So I was really intrigued by this, and I enjoyed it a lot. It was very spicy. It got very hot. Lots of forbidden things in it. It really is. But I honestly really enjoyed the conversations had in here, and I really loved how devoted they were to each other. Like, oh my gosh, it was hot, you guys. It was hot. So I gave this 4 stars. Because honestly, I feel that the author could have done a bit more work with what she was trying to say about religion, right? I don't love to read books where religion is just bashed for its sake, and I don't feel like she did that, because to me it was very clear that the people within the church and the community that were doing bad things were using the church as a cover. They weren't true believers. They weren't, in my opinion, like using they were mistaking God's name to do something, which is what humans always do when they do evil. They use God's name to do it, right? Most of the time. And I feel like the author was kind of scratching against something that she could have went more into about, like, you know, because by the end of it, Roman and Cassie, like, they still are believers too. They don't let the way other people tainted it ruin their relationship or their relationship with God either. And so I wish we'd went more into that, right? Especially when you're someone who you've been raised where religion's been used as a weapon against you, and then you meet someone who doesn't use it that way, and it can like renew your own faith. And I think that could have been a real good balance to all the evil that was in this book. But it's totally fine if the author didn't want to tell that story. I'm just saying the basis of that was there, and it could have added, I'm sorry to make this comparison, it could have added a Sierra Simone level to this dark story, which would have made this over the top amazing. So this being the first book I've read by this author, she does have another series that she has out, but this is the first one I read. I will definitely read more. And she is supposed to have another book in this world coming. So I gave this 4 stars. It was a 4.5 on the spice scale. Whew, it had a lot. It had spanking, voyeurism, public sex, restraints, toys, objects being used, religious objects being used in things. So know that. There's anal too, I believe. And then trigger warnings are, and this is where I'm going to put the spoiler for what's going on, okay? There's SA, parental abuse, human trafficking, as well as human trafficking of minors, and the hint at what's happening to them, okay? Violence, murder, kidnapping, and drugging against your will. So, all those. Alrighty. Then I had a DNF, and I felt bad about this because these were arcs that were sent to me, but it just wasn't working for me. So, I DNF'd this duet. So I was halfway through Death Shall Bow by Gemma Ashbourne, which is supposed to be this fantasy. I believe there was like vampires in here. I didn't really understand them yet, the point I was at. We have our heroine, who is the daughter of death, supposedly. She's supposed to take over her birthright as like the queen of death. And she has, in the beginning, she has a girlfriend, and she is in love with her, and she can't wait to conquer death and whatever she's going to do and then get back to her real life. But it's not going to be that easy, because if you're going to be the queen of death, like, there's a lot to do. Also, there's already someone that she's betrothed to who is not her girlfriend that she loves so much. And so once she gets there and is starting to get shown the ropes, she also meets the man she's supposed to marry. And I think that's the vampire guy. I think Levis is his name, and he's a vampire. I don't know. But I was halfway through this one, and I don't like the heroine at all. And it bums me out. But she has that attitude of, like, I immediately know what's best. Everyone else, fuck everyone else. She's literally horny for everyone. And I can't, like, I struggle with that because I know it's supposed to be, like, supportive of the diversity of, like, her being bisexual. I mean, but I don't like when anyone only sees people for their looks. And it doesn't matter to me whether that's in a sapphic situation or an MF situation or a gay situation. I don't like when we only see people's looks. And she was just, like, wanting to bang everyone. And I don't like that, especially in the situation we're in. And then there was just, yeah, I wasn't getting a vibe for the world. And as I said earlier, I have a lot of books due next week. And so when I'm reading a book that's 280 pages for 4 days, it's got to go, because it means it's not catching me. So I feel bad because this book is already out and I received an arc of this one. So I'll probably do a giveaway for these at some point. I know I just said really nice things about them, but one person's DNF is another person's 6-star read. So I know that for sure. So I'll probably do a giveaway of these at some point, since I want them to go to someone else who would love them. So yeah. Okay, then there was Just Between Us by Lena Hendricks. This one comes out on the 15th. And this one is book 3 in the King family. And this one was so great. Okay, this one was royal. And the family, and this woman named Vita, who gets hired by JP, who is the oldest king, to kind of help uncover what their dad, Russell, has been up to. They're also very suspicious about what did happen to their mother. They were told their mother just abandoned them. They also know at this point in the story that they were actually the second family of Russell, from what we know, and that he actually had another family in, like, a different state. And they find out about that. And so there's some suspicion about, like, the mother knew that she was the other woman, and like, she was okay with that to a certain degree, but also he had become very, very abusive. And, like, that's what we know. Like, the kids remember their dad being abusive, and they also were told that she left. And they're kind of hoping she did leave in some ways, because they want her to still be alive, and we will get into that in this book. So there was actually I really liked how she balanced the B plot, which is finding out what happened with the mom, because those are mysteries we've been wondering about since the Sullivan series, when, you know, because the heroine, one of their sisters gets married in that one. So yeah, and we also have, like, the Sullivans are, you know, they're reluctant friends now too, so they're there to help us when we need. And, you know, it reminds me a lot of the Havens and the Baileys, right? There's that vibe going on, but they're so much goofier in this one. And so Royal, there's a couple fun things about him. Number one, he's a tattoo artist. Number two, he is actually a sex worker. He has kind of an OnlyFans. Now, he doesn't do, like, explicit videos of, like, his body, but he does like, voice work, if you will. Like, he'll show his torso and, like, his package within his clothes, if you get what I mean. And then he'll do these really sexy recordings. So he never shows his face, but, like, you can see his tattoos. And a man who's as distinctive as him, he didn't think this totally through when he started, but it was a way for him to make some extra money in case, like, his father ever fucked up his business, and he just enjoys it. Now, he has this one person that he talks to that he sends some, like, private videos to, where, again, he doesn't go, like, fully sexually explicit, but he'll, like, say her name, you know, things like that. Anyway. And of course that's going to be Vita. So Vita, her, like, guilty pleasure is this app, and she actually will, like, DM with him a lot, and her name is Miss Black Cat is what her username is. And, like, one cute thing, okay, this book was really cute. Before he ever meets her, he tattoos a black cat, like, on his thigh when he's just he just likes to doodle tattoos on himself, which I love. And he, like, put a black cat on there, and I love that because he doesn't even know it's her yet. But also in the beginning, he's trying to do a prank on one of the Sullivans, and I mean, they're not supposed to do hurtful pranks anymore, but he does a thing, and he ends up getting Vita with this prank and, like, covering her in goo in, like, eggs or something, and so that doesn't get them off to a good start. However, when she, like, sees him again, she realizes that it's him because of his tattoos. Like, there's specifically some, like, on his neck and arms that she's like, oh my god, this is him. And so she's horrified. But what I like is, like, it doesn't go on a super long time, because there's something that she says at one point that he connects it. And again, really early on. So she figures it out first. And because she's working for his family, she's like, okay, I need to stop. I have to stop. But she loves their interactions. And but he figures it out too, and when they start hooking up, she's like, it's just gonna be hookups, and when I say it's done, it's done. He agrees, but he is a soft dom, like, he likes to dominate, and she really wants that. And he's so precious with her. Like, if you don't love BDSM, like, if you aren't into that as much, this is very soft versions of it. Just a little bit of, like, you know, ordering her around, and that's really what she wants. And lots of care. He's a very, like, the aftercare is very important, and he makes sure she gets her coffee and breakfast every day, and that she's eating lunch. So very a caring type of dom. It was very sweet stuff. So I loved this one. I don't want to say too much more about why this is, like, it has to do a bit with that B plot. The B plot's great. Also, the third act, top notch. I mean, Lena's one of them for me who I haven't always loved how some of the relationships go with hers, because some of hers are very insta-sexual, right? And even though this one, like, even though he's, like, a sex worker and that's how they meet, it's still all through voice. Like, he doesn't know what she looks like first. So he's he's having these sexy conversations about her personality and about like how she acts and everything. So it just makes it kind of work because he's not like sexualizing her body. He's sexualizing other parts of her. And I don't know, I like that. But she's very good with her third acts for me. Like, one of the reasons I first loved One Look, which was the first book of hers I read, is how the third act was handled. And there was no third act breakup. I won't spoil it. I really won't spoil it. The third act of this was fantastic. It was so good. So honestly, this book was a 5-star. It's not a 6-star. It's not quite. But it's like a 5-star plus a little bit. Because I really liked it. I did. I just ate this up. So I gave it 5 stars. It's a 3.5 on the spice scale for me. And it does have soft dom. There's edging, dirty talk, breath play, very good aftercare. He's a big squish. Okay, he is a big, loving squish who likes to show his dominant side sometimes because his family kind of sees him as the goofy one sometimes, and so he gets to share that. And it's good. It's good. There's very good like explanation in it. Oh yeah, because I said it. There's breath play in here. Really great. And then there is murder, grief, abusive parent, kidnapping, assault, and domestic abuse in the past. And then the last book I finished, which I should not have read last night. Here's the thing. I really shouldn't have read this last night. But when I finished Just Between Us, I was still kind of keyed up and I wasn't ready to sleep. And I didn't want to start one of my arcs just in case I fell asleep with it. So I started Brutal Husband by Lilith Vincent. Lilith Vincent writes very dark romance, usually with a lot of non-consensual things in it. I really liked Brutal Conquest, but I didn't really care for, I think, the second one in it. Either way, I liked the first one. I didn't care for the second one. And then there's this one. And so this one is actually about the sister who's like married in the first one. So there's Mia, and that's Mia's the daughter who gets with her stepdad, right? The stepdad marries mom, Julia, and then he like really wants the stepdaughter, and he's actually like closer in age to the stepdaughter than the mom, than his wife or whatever. So that one's a forbidden one there. So this one is about Rita, Rita, I don't know how to say her name, who is married, and during the time when things are happening with her sister, like she's been abandoned basically by her husband, or that's what we hear. Now, I don't quite know how to talk about this one because there's a big twist in this one, okay? And I almost DNF'd this book because I was getting, again, it was really late when I was reading it, and I obviously don't mind when her heroes are forceful or when they do, you know, like forced breeding. A lot of hers do that. They do like forced pregnancy stuff and things like that. Like, I know what I'm in for with Lilith Vincent. But I just was not seeing the tender part that I like to see go along with the viciousness. Because if they're going to be that way, they got to have the sweet moments. And I was getting frustrated. However, what I will say is that the twist explains that, why he's being that way. And so, yeah, I really don't want to spoil it, but I'll say a little bit more about it too. So she ends up, this is kind of sort of an arranged marriage with Nero is her husband's name. And we see, though, a flash forward at the beginning where Nero is returning after those 6 months he's been gone. And he is literally like really pissed at her. He breaks down the door and he like fucks her. And she says some very interesting things to him about, he's like, who have you been seeing? Why have you been lying to me? Like, there's all these things. And she's like, you've abandoned me. Tell me why you abandoned me. Blah, blah, blah. Just all these things came out. And you don't understand. And again, he is like so mad at her. He is like fucking her and just like it starts off hard, okay? And then when he's like, tell me what you did, all these things. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, you're lying. I know you're lying. He like injects her with a tracker chip, and he's like, I'm going to find out, and then I'm going to kill you. And you're just like, what's going on? But then we go back in time. I don't even know if it's like 2 years. And she's like, being courted by Nero and just marrying him. And he's very hot and cold with her. Sometimes he's very loving, and he's still a real naughty boy, right? But she's very like into him, and she's like, this could be interesting. And she's like, you can be cold and calculating all you want as long as you're good to me in private. You know, if you have to be professional on the outside, be nice and private. And he's like, okay, I'll do that. And anyway, so we see what things were like for the last 2 years for her. And once we find out the twist, it puts those years into perspective for what was going on, okay? I know that's very vague, but I will tell you, I did not know what to feel about this for such a long time, but yet I couldn't put it down. So I will say I did skim a few places because I was like, I want to know what the hell's going on. Like, I was getting really mad, and I think she does push you very far. So you need to be okay with the non-consensual things because, yeah, he's force breeding. He is telling her, like, I'm going to get you pregnant, then I'm going to keep you. And he mean, like, I'm going to punish you because now you want a divorce, and I'm going to keep you until you're pregnant, and all these things. Like, all these things. He's, like, choking her, spanking her, saying all these awful... So you're like, what is going on? And the thing I kept thinking, though, and I'll tell you this just in case you start it, and you're like, why did Jenn like this? What's going on? There is a reason he's acting like she's acting, and there's a reason she hates him and is acting like she's acting. And it's like that problem of, like, he's looking at the black side of the rock and she's looking at the white side of the rock, and the rock is two different colors, but they're yelling at the other one that it's the one way, right? There's that little parable of, like, he says, it's white, what's your problem? And she's like, it's black, what's your problem? But it's split down the middle in something that neither of them knows the full information about it. And when the twist was revealed, I enjoyed this a lot. It wasn't quite enough to make it like a 5-star story, but it's enough that I will recommend this to people. And those of you who like all the nasty things, like it's in here, but you still want a hero who is romantic and loving, you have that by the end of this book. And I believe it. So that is a lot to say. You definitely can look at Goodreads if you want a spoiler for what the twist is, if you think you know. But yeah, the kinky things in this one, there's breeding kink, spanking, public sex, choking, degradation, praise. All those are the hot things in here. And then there's trigger warnings for non-consensual stuff, forced breeding, kidnapping, mention of human trafficking, stalking, somnophilia, and kidnapping of a child too. So there is a lot going on in this, but I gave it 4 stars, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. I know I said that there's a lot in here, but it wasn't quite like an erotic romance. Like, there was still other stuff going on. So yeah, those are the 10 books. We're right at an hour. Look at me here. So thank you so much for watching this. I hope you'll check some of these out. I'll have links for everything down below. And yeah, I hope you enjoy and have a wonderful week, you guys. Bye.